Hi, everyone. I'm Hootie. I run a fund called Hash3, which is a seed stage crypto fund. We're early investors in EigenLayer and a bunch of AVSs. So today we'll be talking about mapping the supply side. If you guys want to intro yourselves.
Sounds good. Hey, everyone. How's it going? I'm Juan. I'm a protocol specialist at Obol Labs, and we're building distributed validators for Ethereum.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina, and I'm head of staking at Everstake, the biggest retail validator across like 80+ blockchains.
Hey, everyone. I'm Harrison Comfort, a co-founder of IvyNet. We're building a restaking middleware for operators in the ecosystem to help them maximize their return on compute.
Hi guys, Amir from Puffer. We started with the first permissionless liquid restaking platform on top of Ethereum. We are now even building further to the Ethereum infrastructure stack by expanding our services to based shared sequencing and based rollups. We announced the launch of Puffer Unify yesterday, and very excited about this bright future of Ethereum. That's why I'm going to keep wearing my shades till the end.
I think that's a good place to start. So over the last year, we saw a bunch of shared security platforms either emerge or gain a bunch of TVL. And with that, you see LRTs, you see native restaking, you've seen a bunch of operators. Like, how do you think that ecosystem is going to evolve over time?
That's a very good question, but I think we might need like 45-minute panel to dive into that. So I'll sum it up in a way that's saying that certainly like shared sequencing layer provides a lot of new capabilities that are not enabled in protocol today. If we want to get them, we would have to essentially do a hard fork to the entire network that we don't prefer that to do so. That's where like something like an EigenLayer or like these like restaking services are very beneficial to the entire ecosystem. How it would evolve, I would really see like we have to carefully follow what sort of platforms are coming to this to take advantage of these services. There is risk associated with actually opting into extra slashing mechanisms, so we have to closely follow what are going to be the risks, what are going to be these new avenues of income for these protocols, and what are some of these exciting applications that they're going to enable for the infrastructure of the blockchain. So yet to be seen.
Yeah, I'm happy to add a little bit of color there as well. I think Amir right there hit on a very interesting point, which is slashing. Right now, we don't have any slashing online on EigenLayer on the restaking protocols. So I think the early signs of this market is it's a very nascent market with some certain key features are still not there yet. Those key features being slashing and also, for example, AVS is paying the operators actually for that security. So right now, I think it's the market is very noisy. You have a bunch of AVSs who are receiving crazy delegations, but yeah, there's really no economic flow going back and forth between the operators and the AVSs yet. And also LRT is opting into multiple AVSs, making those decisions. As there is no slashing, you basically opt into all the AVSs. You're not really perhaps taking into account what the risks are going to come in the future. So I'd say once we see slashing go live, once we start seeing the economic flows between AVSs and operators, I think we're going to see a much more real picture of the restaking market. I think we're not seeing yet.
Yeah, I would probably add that the frameworks that's what's going to work for the future of the restaking and generally the LRTs, because at the moment we are seeing that the protocols that are building the frameworks, so other LRT protocols or the AVSs could take advantage of those. So they could skip this essentially important step, but it is so hard to make it from scratch. And this could easily decentralize and improve the scale of the project that we have right now. So we have the frameworks for basically everything. Like you want an EVS, you can use a shared security framework, and yes, you can take it and build your product. You don't need to focus on other things other than your product.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, I think everyone in this room can probably agree that restaking represents some concept of like the next frontier of SaaS. So as much as the folks on this stage and others can really optimize the non-differentiating aspects of developing an AVS, so AVS developers can really focus on differentiating solutions, the easier and the faster the pace of adoption is going to be.
Cool. So do you think that there'll be a point in time where operators and LRTs verticalize, or are they going to stay separate layers?
I would like to see them separate because we want to see things as permissionless as possible. We want, permissionlessness is a prerequisite to actually getting to decentralization. And I believe decentralization is a strict enhancement of UX for all the users within the blockchain. We know the easiest thing on the UX side is MEV, for example, and Ethereum L1 itself. Users do not want to be traded against what they're submitting as a transaction on the blockchain itself. And this can expand to all the other future applications as well. So yes, I do believe that we should keep them as separate as possible because of the conflict of interest and because of the extractable value that exists here that might create a bad user experience for our users.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because being layered and being decentralized and being permissionless this is the key for decentralization. And if we have a layered ecosystem, it will be more rich, and it's actually the competition. Because if we have the competition between the ecosystem members, then we have a better product. Because if you're the one and you're centralized, you don't need to do anything. You're the one. It's the monopoly. And when you have the decentralization, you have a richer market. You have more options for users and for the developers to create the products.
Totally agree, but I think one thing that we need to be mindful of being a layer in the stack is you need to have outstanding support experience. Because the last thing that anybody wants is that something is broken and you have to spend time figuring out where the source of that issue is. So I think that is something collectively that we need to be mindful of in this layered or sort of modular future.
Okay. So if we're going to retain operators and LRTs as separate layers, how does that impact the yield that AVSs have to pay, and then the ultimate yield that restakers get?
I would say it's a balance of risk and return. It always is in any platform. The simplest format of a slashable economy is Ethereum L1 and liquid staking. People with ETH just opt into it, knowing the risk of it and knowing the yield that they're going to get from it. Similar to that, to the LRTs and AVSs, users, the LRT protocol, first of all, has to be transparent enough on scoring the risks of any of these future AVSs that are providing services with respect to the yield that they're paying their users. And certainly, as an operator, also, they're going to be measuring how much money an operator, how much compute cost that they're going to be putting in, and how much share of these operations are they going to be receiving. So it's all, I believe, falls within a very measurable universe that an operator versus a staker can put into account to come in. Where I see, for example, Puffer is today, we are this connecting layer between the stakers with ETH and also the folks that have the knowledge of doing operations. And in this permissionless setting, an LRT is responsible to designing their ecosystem in a way that these two parties can interact trustlessly. This trustlessness comes from many things that we can employ. There are certain key management schemes that we can do that actually removes the source of trust, including anti-slashers, including what actually Cubist is doing in terms of key management for AVSs as well. So to sum it up, we really want to build something that creates this trustless communication between whoever has the skill to run the node and whoever has the stake. And that was really the birth of liquid staking, to put it to perspective.
I'd really like to double down on what Amir was mentioning about how right now LRTs are, the major deciders of which AVSSH protocol supports. And I think going back to what I said at first, given the fact that you still don't have slashing at the moment, we still need to work a lot and really double down on building these risk frameworks and making sure we understand what we are really opting into, because adding extra slashing conditions to your stake is something that we shouldn't take lightly. And I think at some point in future, when slashing goes live and we see a couple of mass slashings, I think the customer or the depositor will really understand what the risks they're entailing and restaking in particular. We at Obol, for example, we are in charge of securing the base layer. So by basically providing the shielded validators for layer 1, I think one of the things that AVS should really consider when picking their security is how is the layer 1 stake that I'm accessing, or the stake I'm opting into for security, how is it being managed? What types of, for example, what Amir mentioned of key management infrastructure, anti-slashers, DVT. I mean, these are all things that an AVS should really consider when paying for security. And I think we're just seeing the initial phases of this process.
Cool. So on the topic of risk, how do you guys think about looping risk? And do you think that looping risk is currently prevalent?
This is an interesting topic that we always get asked about re-staking or looping or things of that sort. Really, it depends where the user itself is, right? The user themselves, they can just say, I would like more risk, and they just keep opting in. They can go to re-staking. Really, it's the platform that is on the top is going to potentially get hurt the most or be at the most risk. If someone just wrapped their token as many times as they want to launch a product, they are at the most risk as a protocol, and their users should be very well aware of them. Well, as an LRT, we don't encourage this. As an LRT, like Puffer, we are only actually doing one layer of free staking, which is just delegating that native beacon chain ETH to the applications that are going to be supported. Yes, and users should be aware of what platform they're using at what risk cost. Let's say Bridge X is protected by the first layer of restaking, and then Bridge Y comes out, which is protected by the liquid restaking token of that Bridge X. It means now you're compounding these risk of essentially if Bridge X gets slashed, then for sure there's going to be a damage to Bridge Y. So these are transparency and the users basically knowledge that should be involved in this. But we're living in a permissionless world. Anything can be built, anything can be modified and built, and it's really due to the users' risk taste to which path they want to take, which path they would want to go. I wouldn't see it as an existential risk as people are really trying to highlight it as, rather than it's just whichever protocol uses that, it's their own risk and the users that are within that protocol.
Yeah, one thing I really like to add, and I think we're already seeing this with new restaking protocols emerging at the moment, is which assets they take in as collateral. So, for example, let's take Symbiotic. At the moment, they're not currently accepting LRTs. Why? Because I think there is a risk in which if I begin accepting an LRT, which is working currently with EigenLayer, and that stake gets slashed on EigenLayer, it's going to affect my own protocol. So something that we should be aware of, and I think Symbiotic is doing a good job here, is let's keep if we restaking or shared security ecosystems relatively separate, because that's where I think risk can really go cascading pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would like to say that actually double that guys mentioned earlier, but there is a risk of looping, and I suppose that the projects that allow the restaking, and to the infinity, there should be some limitation, because yes, users are aware, but we are not at that stage of the not the market, but the industry, when users are fully aware. A lot of people don't understand what is restaking. They are not using the restaking, and the concept is absolutely new, and this could harm the ecosystem and the project. So Possibly in the future there should appear some limitations, like you cannot restake your token more than like 10 times or 20 times, or I don't know. So set some kind of limitation. Yeah, you can do that if you want. You should be aware of the risk you have, but you cannot go like 1,000 times, but because this could collapse the whole ecosystem, the whole structure.
Harrison, anything? No.
Nothing to add on
Okay,
that.
cool. So you sort of started to talk about Symbiotic and how they're not accepting LRTs. Like, maybe do other people have differing points of view that, or does the rest of the panel agree that other shared security platforms will have their own unique LRTs?
Yeah, I would say it's just like I would want to hone down on permissionlessness. We're not here to really dictate, you build this, I want to gatekeep you, you can't build that. That's the magic of the blockchain. But we would like to advise people, yes, this is extra risk. And I think we're all on the same page that, yes, when you wrap something that is securing something else is extra risk. So, yes.
And honestly, I think the more types of tokens that are utilized in a restaking context, the better, because I think that will ultimately map to the different types of AVSs. And I understand that there would need to be some protocol modifications to introduce things like counter slashing, but I think real-world assets, specifically things like tokenized treasuries, like represent fantastic collateral to engage and participate in different shared security protocols. So I'm super bullish on seeing the different permutations and compositions of stake that different protocols or subsegments of protocols will be allowing.
Cool. Okay, so we're getting low on time. We're going to do one last question, then we're going to ask people in the audience if they have questions. What is your one hot take? We'll go down the line. What's your one hot take around the supply side specifically, or if you want to give a broader one, but mostly supply side of shared security platforms?
I have to go first. Okay, cool. So I think right now, as I alluded to, I think throughout this panel, we are still in a very nascent market where the supply side ecosystem is still getting mapped out. Operators are, beginning to engage with AVSs. I mean, there are at least until we see some economic flows going back and forth, we're not really. I think we need to fully see the full picture. Primarily, we need to see these economic flows happening, and we need to see slashing. And once slashing goes live, and we see a couple of mass slashings, I think that's where we're going to understand the extra risk we're taking. And yeah, just generally, I think right now the market is very, very noisy. I'd say with points mania. I mean, we need to really tone it down and see what's really behind, and that's where we're really going to get to a much mature stage of the restaking ecosystem.
Yeah, you mentioned about a lot of projects, and we see that a lot of projects emerging in the market. However, we are at the point when these projects, we don't need to just grab at them and enter them, because we saw the examples when people are just we are restaking, but they are doing nothing. They are not doing anything, and we should be aware, and people should be aware that you have to, like a classic, do your research and all this thing, but be diligent about who you're working with in terms your operator or your restaker. This is very important. And regarding my hot intake, it would be in the future, at the moment, we are on the launch of restaking, and we have the new layer of the staking industry, and it is only growing, and we have another use case of actually restaking the shared security. And I'm curious how the vast majority will get that in terms of the development side and in terms of the user side, with all the frameworks and all the solutions we have right now.
I think in the long term, the cost of shared security will be two components. It'll just be whatever the cost of the resources are that a particular AVS is demanding, and then whatever assurance or SLA that particular AVS wants on top of it to ensure that they're going to actually get those resources.
Since you asked for hot take, I'm going to make this a little more spicy. I would say a lot of existing LRTs are not ready when slashing comes live. And I would say that on the operation side, on the technology side, a lot around beacon chain staking has to be configured to actually enable slashing without actually this potential ransom between the slashing committee and also the staking protocol itself. And a lot of them are not ready for it. And I'm not going to account into even the risk side, the risk management side. Sure, a lot of people are over highlighting there should be a risk management, but I'm like, are we even ready on the implementation stack yet? Can you eject your beacon chain ETH at the command of your AVS, Veniscus, slash, or slashing committee? These are the questions that I don't think a lot of people have answers to, and they just deployed LRTs. So I guess that's probably like my hottest take around that, and like something at Buffer that we really like honed on and thought about a lot.
Cool. Any questions? Nope. All right. Oh.
So you hinted at this, Hootie, but just want to survey the audience. If you were to say what the ultimate, if you look at the gross yield available to restakers and the net yield available to restakers, after considering all the suppliers in the ecosystem, what is each of your guesses in terms of what that percentage will be? So the percentage that will flow to restakers.
I can just start answering that right now. We can't tell yet for sure. That's like, I will put that up front. But existing that we have, it would be very hard to match what we have from the Ethereum L1 staking yield. It would be a massive challenge because you look at the scale of how Ethereum operates today, and to achieve that transaction level on just an AVS or a handful of AVSs that we have is a little unfair to say. But in defense of the net yield, I would say, given that if a protocol really cared about the risk and the whole slashing side of things, and they can really minimize the slashing by a big factor, even if the net yield is 0.2% more than just like staking on an LSD, it's already strictly better to move to an LRT. And that's where I see like this net yield is going to be really like important here. And I am excited, like it might not look much right now because of the current AVS market that we have, that there might not be a lot of vision to like potential of like their rewards, but the future AVSs that we haven't even counted into, including potential AVSs around pre-confirmations that are going to be interacting with every transaction that a user sends to any rollup. These are going to be like the pretty big like sort of futures that can really increase the yield comparable to what of an ETH yield today is. So yes, to answer your question, potential is less than or equal to current ETH L1 yield.
I mean, if you think of ETH staking as like the risk-free rate, like a TradFi example would be in terms of like the spread between IG and high yield, it's around 4%. So I think that as an overall percentage, that's like a decent approximation. And then I think probably up to half of that would be retained by the different actors in the ecosystem, and the remaining would flow back to the stakers.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here as well. There is a very interesting report, if you want to check it out. It's from a Stakehouse Financial. They did some estimates on this. And I think the proxy they use is, well, all the AVSs, I mean, they're going to be services essentially that probably the rollups are going to be paying for. So a good proxy to understand a bit better how much APY, like extra APY we're going to get from restaking is, looking at layer 2 fees, how much could they pay? And I think the estimate is around like currently like 0.5% extra APY, roughly. And that's like current estimates, of course, given the current market, not accounting for growth. I mean, of course, yeah, if price is skyrocketing or whatever. But generally, I think 0.5% is what I saw on that report, and I think it's a really good read if you want to check it out.
Cool. Thank you.
And our next session will be about attracting TVL with our speakers Ismail from Lagrange, Mike from Ethify, YQ from Alt Layer, and Ben from Node Capital.
So hello, I'm very happy to be here. Today we're going to talk about attracting TVL. We have to be more precise about the dynamics between LRTs and AVSs. But let's start with a short introduction. YQ?
Oh, yeah, glad to be here, and thanks for AWS invite. So YQ here, founder of Alina. So at Alina, we're basically launching like different types of rollups, either this native rollup like OP, Arbitrum, Polygon CDK, ZK stack, and on top of that, we are also launching these restate rollups, basically leveraging Eigen's shared security to perform this decentralized verification, sequencing, and also fast finality for different rollups.
Hi, everyone. Mike Siligadze, I'm the founder and CEO of Etherfi. Our ultimate goal is to make DeFi easy for normal people. In the near term, the way we kind of got started is by building a liquid restaking protocol on EigenLayer and then launched a series of products beyond that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ismail. I'm one of the co-founders of Lagrange. We focus on building a ZK coprocessor. So a ZK coprocessor is a scalability solution that lets existing smart contracts on Ethereum or Ethereum-compatible L2s expand the scale of computation that they can run. So they can do things that are more expressive, and our network that is serving and generating these proofs is deployed today on EigenLayer as an AVS.
So hello, I'm Ben Rothschild. I'm a venture partner at Node Capital, an early-stage crypto VC focusing on infrastructure. So let's begin in the beginning of the funnel for all this incredible ecosystem to thrive. First, the liquid restaking protocols, also known as LRPs. For simplicity, I will use LRPs as to attract TVL. Now is the place to make a disclosure. We are at Node Capital, a very proud seed investor at Etherfi. But nonetheless, no one can deny that Etherfi achieved a significant amount of TVL. Actually, we haven't seen such a growth for a while. So, Mike, would you mind to share how have you done it and how are you planning to retain and sustain this growth?
Sure, yeah, so we've, the growth really has been kind of meteoric. I think everyone was surprised by it. We were surprised, the EigenLayer was surprised. I don't think we realized just how much pent-up demand, existed for this kind of thing. And I think it's a function of a lot of things. We got super lucky with timing. When we launched and when EigenLayer really launched was when the whole crypto market experienced a resurgence, right? ETH price more than doubled. And just the ETFs were approved, tons of capital started pouring in. And restaking, I think, became, the narrative for Ethereum, maybe even to some extent, all of crypto. And so we were all just the beneficiaries of that. I think it's important to acknowledge that in addition to building what's hopefully a pretty good product, there was just a huge element of timing and luck involved, which I don't think is really possible to replicate. It's kind of a perfect storm of good stuff happening. But there's a bunch of other things that I think we did quite deliberately, that helped us be successful. One of the things we focused on was really building out our DeFi ecosystem. Our internal policy, much to the chagrin of some of our employees, was we're just going to say yes to everything. That was our policy, is we're just saying yes to every integration, every partnership. We'll figure out how to make it happen, but just say yes to everything. We had to work 16-hour days for many, many, many months, but I think that allowed us to get a presence on every layer 2, now our liquid restaking token, ETH, is integrated. It's probably the most widely integrated staking token at this point. And it's integrated in basically every chain protocol, everywhere that you might find, DeFi integrations. So that helped out. And then I think just creating a trusted brand helped quite a bit. Focusing on security, ensuring withdrawals were enabled on day one, and just continuing to deliver and over-deliver on our promises to our users, I think just created a trusted brand where people felt comfortable deploying sometimes many hundreds of millions of dollars into the protocol. So I think it was a combination of those things.
Great, and how do you plan to sustain and retain it, this amazing growth?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think there's a certain amount of Lindy that just emerges naturally when something gets big enough and integrated into everything. So I think we're sort of past the minimum viable stage, and there's just an element of longevity that's kind of baked in just by aggressively bootstrapping to a good size. However, I don't think that's enough. That's not sufficient differentiation, and so that's why our longer-term strategy, as I mentioned, at the very beginning, is really to build a suite of DeFi. Integrated DeFi apps that make DeFi easy for normal people. So in our case, that is our trifecta or trilogy of products, EtherFi Stake, EtherFi Liquid, and EtherFi Cash, which allow you to save, invest, and spend your crypto. And so this integrated offering, I think, is unique. It's the first of its kind in crypto and in DeFi. And it creates enough utility around the entire suite that it becomes more than just the sum of its parts, let's say.
Okay, thanks. So let's move forward in the funnel. So Ismail, from a perspective of an AVS, and I know that in Lagrange case, you've signed contracts with the 4 biggest LRPs, which is super impressive, securing more than $2 billion USD. But let's talk also in general. An AVS has many options. So how does it choose which LRP to approach, or if to go directly to EigenLayer?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So in terms of where Lagrange is right now, we are in production with 2 AVSs that are secured by more than 7 billion each in restaked ETH. Much of this ETH comes from many of the LRT protocols, like EtherFi, who we've had tremendous relationships with because of their professionalism and because of their prevalence in the EigenLayer ecosystem. So when we think through how we select our capital, the first and foremost question we have to answer is, what is the expectation of yield on that capital? And do we believe we have the capacity as a company and as a team to properly pay out that yield? And so in line with that, when we were engaging with and working with LRTs initially, it was a dialogue, it was a conversation. We operate in a market on top of EigenLayer, and we want to determine how we can, in the best way possible, materialize as much economic security as we can in our system while ensuring that the rates that we pay on it are competitive. And so I think EigenLayer right now is at this very interesting moment where there is a massive amount of economic security. Slashing will be added soon. Payments will be added soon. And a lot of projects are thinking through, how can I leverage this for my application's function? And concurrently with that thought, I would suggest that those projects think to themselves, well, how much security can I pay for? Because if I need to have the ability to slash that security, I need to have the ability to make whole a payment. I need to be able to cover the risk-adjusted return that the capital expects and the capital source expects. The good thing about teams like EtherFi is that they have really sticky participants. They have a great ecosystem, and so you can trust that the capital you get from there is competitive with the broader market. I would caution against using capital sources that might not be sticky, that might flee in the event of market downturn. And I'd also say that an important question is operator diversity. It is how many operators are being used by this LRT in order to secure the AVSs that it works with, and are these operators who I believe have the capacity to securely run my infrastructure? Are these marquee participants in other POS and economic-based systems, or are these folks who sort of maybe just entered the space for the first time or started to gain prevalence for the first time as EigenLayer took off? And I think, to the credit of many of the LRT protocols, and EtherFi is a great example of this, the folks they work with are consummate professionals.
Thanks. Maybe one more question. How do you ensure the usage of the staked ETH on the network?
Yeah, so I think when you design a mechanism that requires economic security, you have to ask,
how is this security being used within my design? So to make a very concrete example, our prover network requires economic security to guarantee the liveness of participants who are generating proofs that we deliver to our customers and our end users. And so in order for us to do this, we use economic security that is sanctioned against in the event that a prover is non-compliant with their obligation to generate a proof at some point in time. And so the amount of economic security that our network uses is commensurate with the amount of proofs that the network generates. And at any point in time, the stake that an operator has actively provisioned and used within our infrastructure is the amount proportionate to the number of proofs that they have pulled from the system at some point in time. And so the capital requirements we have scale dynamically, as do the payouts and expected returns that we can deliver.
Thanks. So YQ, with Outlayer's new idea of risk-taked rollups, which offer a significant value to existing rollups such as decentralization, interoperability, enhanced security, and more and fast finality. And I'm sure that this value helps these rollups to attract TVL. May you elaborate on?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, right, definitely I believe with the collaboration with the Eigen and on building these different AVS, as you mentioned, right? For example, the mark for fast finality and also verification. We've been securing a bunch of these recently rollouts so far. I think it's already 4, and today we just launched another one. So the thing a little bit different from the other AVS is that for us, right, as you can see, we are launching risk-based rollups or rollups on different sectors, like gaming, social, DeFi, and today we launched another one, DeepIn. So as you just mentioned, right, since we can provide this extra security for these rollups, definitely we give their users more confidence in using these rollups. And it's not just about TVL, also this number of users. If you look at the data, soon we will launch a dashboard for most of the risk-based rollout. You will see that they have like tons of millions of transactions and also millions of users. So that definitely a boost of the confidence for the user to use these rollups. As I just mentioned, like in another sort of conference just now, so the pinpoints for the existing rollup stacks is really about the single sequencer, and basically for the big ones like OP, Arbitrum, probably Base, they're fine because like we know that they won't run away. So even it's a single sequencer, but still we can trust the sequencer somehow. But for a lot of these application-specific rollups, right, they don't really have the advantage because they are big in their sector, for example, in gaming or in social. But in crypto, for the crypto users, we probably don't know them. And in that case, even they have fraud proof or ZK proof, but still, since everything is really running on top of the single sequencer, like typically for a lot of protocols, they don't really have a lot of confidence and trust in it. So in that case, if we can really have a separate network on the verification of the blocks, the transactions generated by the sequencer, that will be a great boost on the confidence. Like they can, basically, I can bridge my access to this L2, or I can do more interactions with the L2. So that's something I believe is very special at this stage when we bring this risk-based rollup for a lot of these projects and applications. They feel like it's definitely solve some of the pinpoints beyond its scalability and also low gas fees. And that definitely something I believe right now it's sort of like very key point when we talk to these applications and why they choose us. Yeah.
Okay. It's important to say that Outlayer's risk-taked rollups are basically AVSs themselves, right? Mm-hmm. We are talking about 3 vertically integrated AVSs, which also need to secure their networks and to attract TVL. Can it create a competition between Outlayer and its partners?
Actually, it's not really. It's the other way around. For example, we collaborate with Ismail Lagrange and a bunch of the other AVS, and we have friends, close friends with a lot of these AVS founders. So because for us, we sort of like provide the funnel where these rollups. Because for rollups, we beyond like sort of the normal sequencing, explorer, bridge, they also need some extra services. So for example, this ZK processor, especially for gaming, right? You won't really process all the features and also functionalities on chain, you definitely need to handle something off chain. So in that case, like Lagrange or some other AVS, they can provide this verified off-chain computation is a B+. And beyond that, also Oracle, also some new breeds secured by this Eigen. And these are all like sort of good partners we currently work with them. Basically, sometimes we even prioritize the collaboration with them because we know them very well for the past 2 years. And at the same time, we know that they have some extra security shared from this Eigen compared to the other like sort of bridges or some other protocols. They basically have their own POS network, right? All the security derived from their own tokens. So in this case, like for the AVS natively secured by Eigen, minimum, even before slashing, right? Right now, I think everyone has like over 1 billion security there. And once the slashing there, even probably TVL decreased a little bit, but we still believe the security guarantee is much better than a pure native POS network. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So Mike, let's back to you. Also, the restaking liquid protocol, there's many options in which AVS is to stake in. So how do you make this decision?
I mean, I think that's a very hard question because honestly, the slashing conditions, ultimately the criteria for the decision is, I guess, the quality of the team and the product that they're building, whether we think it makes sense long term. Because in the end, all of this stuff only makes sense if people make products that other people use and pay for, right? Unless that happens, the whole thing is just a bunch, a stupid points farm. So in order for it not to be that, we want to work with AVSs that actually, again, strong teams, good products that we think people will use, like Lagrange, I think being a good example of that. Once you get past that stage, you need to evaluate sort of the technical merits. What are the slashing conditions? What are the risks? Are you risking the whole principle or just some portion of it? Is it a thing that you can get slashed to zero instantly, or is it more of a gradual process there? These characterizations are really important. And none of this stuff is fully built out. I don't know of any AVS actually that has a fully well-developed model for what their slashing conditions are going to be. So for us, what we've started doing is we did a project with Gauntlet to do a bit of a model of how to select AVSs. We're now working with Chaos Labs to create an intake model for AVSs to assess risk and upside and so on. And I think it's just going to be a process to develop these models. And initially, it's just going to be a lot of judgment calls. In other words, making decisions and trying to be conservative. Like we've always said, as EtherFi, we're going to be the boring LRT. In other words, we're not going to have the highest yields, but we're also hopefully going to be the lowest chance of losing your money. And so we haven't, let's say, some LRTs have just gone 100% restake everything to everybody. We have not done that deliberately. I think we've restaked everything to EigenDA because I think that's, it's pretty robust. And hey, we're already trusting the EigenLayer team, so might as well. But we haven't restaked everything to others. We've done more smaller chunks, and we've been much more deliberate. And the way we've designed our operators, the way we've registered them with EigenLayer and a lot of technical details, allow us much more granular control over our risk model. So, I mean, again, that's not saying much other than it's going to be a process, and we're going to be very, very careful and deliberate about it.
Cool. So I see we have still some minutes left. So let's talk about the partnerships among you, the panelists. I know that Lagrange has a partnership with EtherFi and with Outlier, but maybe I have a small scoop. Yesterday over dinner, YQ told me that also EtherFi and Outlier has a partnership. So maybe you can share with us. Go ahead.
EtherFi? Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll just briefly, so we're launching we have our trilogy of products, EtherFi, Stake, Liquid, and Cash. Our Cash product is actually going to have its own roll-up. We haven't really been marketing or selling the fact that we're doing a layer 2 because honestly, it feels like a very grifty thing that's been happening. And ours is very simple and utilitarian. We just need block space to be able to record credit card transactions with some level of privacy. And so we're using AltLayer to do our roll-up, as a service.
Alpha.
Ismail?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we have a partnership in place with AltLayer and with EtherFi, as you mentioned. And so, I've known YQ for a bit of time, and we have a very high opinion of the AltLayer team and of the products that they build with their restaked rollups. And we think of scaling computation through co-processing as very synergistic with scaling computation through rollups. As you develop new execution spaces and you deploy these, there are still certain primitives that these execution spaces just naturally don't have access to since they're blockchains, right? Scaling computation over historical data, over receipt data, over transaction data, et cetera. And so we have integrations in place with AltLayer to be able to offer the core co-processing functionality that we have deployed on many OP rollups and Ethereum and CDK stack, et cetera, but being able to deploy that on any restaked rollup that's created through AltLayer, such that end users can benefit from this type of computation directly from their applications, wherever those applications are placed. And we also have work that we've done with EtherFi, in particular on the delegation side, where EtherFi has delegated assets to operators within our state committee and our prover network AVSs. And we also have work that we're actively discussing with EtherFi related to using co-processing as a primitive within certain aspects of their DeFi protocols. I think one of the things I've personally been very excited about in the EigenLayer ecosystem is the foundations of restaking are collaborative. It's a multi-party system. You have a heterogeneous set of protocol participants who have relationships with a bunch of different AVSs and have the responsibility to allocate assets into pools that are being run by series of different, that are supplying capital to series of different AVSs. And so in line with that, it makes sense for AVSs to collaborate. It makes sense for AVSs to have preferred partners who they want operators to run, because effectively, if there's a slashing condition and one of your partners loses capital, you lose capital, it's a system-wide thing that affects multiple teams concurrently.
Yeah, so I just give some additional points, like as Ismail just mentioned, right? There's a lot of collaborations almost on different perspectives. Like for example, with range, right? We're using their ZK coprocessor. At the same time, they are basically running their prover network, right? We are also supporting them as part of the prover network. And meanwhile, in the future, when we launch some ZK rollup, we may also use their prover network to basically do the proof. Same to EtherFi, as Mike just mentioned. Apart from there are a bunch of EVS we launched for the restate rollup, EtherFi is as an LRT. At the same time, they also work with some operators delegate to the sort of the AVS to secure the AVS. And beyond that, for their new product, we are also happy to help to launch a rollup. As you can see, right, it's basically collaboration is everywhere. So I just feel like the Eigen ecosystem or the restaking ecosystem, all the projects are quite sticky to each other. It's really instead of to compete against each other, right now at this stage, I believe it's really to collaborate with each other and just try to build a better this kind of crypto space. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think the time is up. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.